Most of Week 11 is in the books, and it started back on Thursday night with the game between the Jets and Patriots. The Patriots ended up winning this game 27-14, but the Jets came out firing as they had a 14-play opening drive that took up more than half of the first quarter. After that drive, I thought maybe we'd have a game on our hands, but they had 3 3-and-outs for the remainder of their first half drives. And between drop passes from Jets players and Garrett Wilson missing this game, and the Jets quarterback play not being particularly great, the only real takeaway I have for the Jets is I think you have to go Tyrod Taylor the rest of the way. Justin Fields has failed to throw for 100 yards in 3 of his last 5 starts and has thrown for more than 120 yards just once in his last 5 starts. I think it's clear he isn't the guy, and I think Tyrod Taylor gives the rest of the offense a chance to truly evaluate where this team is heading into 2026. After a 28-23 win in Tampa in Week 10, this was a classic trap game spot for the Patriots, yet they came out and took care of business and won by double digits. The Patriots are 9-2, and we've discussed their schedule before, but I really think the AFC East is largely wrapped up, and that I'd be pretty surprised if New England doesn't win at least 13 games. They're in the driver's seat. Drake May is insanely good for being just 23 years old, and who would have thought that when Travion Henderson gets the football, he makes plays and good things happen. Good team win for the New England Patriots. The Dolphins defeated the Commanders 16-13 in overtime in Spain, and the biggest thing with this game was they won, and the path for them is there. We discussed this in the Week 11 preview, but Miami can legitimately be in playoff contention in the middle of December, and the Dolphins' first 2 games off their Week 12 bye are home against the Saints and at the Jets, so yes, get your jokes in, but they can be 6-7 through 13 games if everything goes according to plan. Devon Achane had another phenomenal game, and I'm sure some Dolphins fans are a little annoyed with winning games at the moment, mainly because of the draft pick and also because they're, not going to win the Super Bowl, but this team has now won 3 of their last 4 games, and I think there is a larger conversation about Mike McDaniel in 2026 for another video, but they are still in the hunt. The Commanders are 3-8 after this game, and obviously they've had a long year due in large part to injury, but if there is any big takeaway from Week 11, it's that they should move on from kicker Matt Gay. There's a large portion of the season left, and there is a lot of time to use this time period as an extended tryout for a kicker for the 2026 season. There's also a real chance that with the Commanders' remaining schedule, they may finish the season with a 3-14 record. I don't think they're going to win more than 5 games, and I know Jaden Daniels' injury was not a season ender, at least season-ending IR, but I wouldn't be upset for the long-term outlook of the Commanders franchise if he didn't play again this year in what is a clearly lost season. The Texans beat the Titans 16-13 in Week 11 to improve to 5-5, and there's a lot of things that can be said about this game for Houston. You can be gloomy that they barely beat a bad team, or you can be upbeat that you're in the hunt in November and won on the road with a backup quarterback. Was it a pretty win in any capacity? Absolutely not. The Texans had 0 first-half points, and they play the Bills, Colts, and Chiefs in their next 3 games. But they're 5-2 in their last 7 games, and Nico Collins had his 3rd straight game of 75 or more yards, and the defense held an opponent to 18 points or less for the 3rd time in the last 4 weeks. And the biggest thing for Houston is they're 5-5, and the opportunity is there, and Davis Mills led the team to a win. With Tennessee, I would argue this is the best possible outcome for this team. There were a few splash plays from Cam Ward, and in a lot of ways, this was what some people would call an ethical tank. If there is anything to criticize, I do think the opening day roster for the Titans stops the Texans on 3rd and 16 late in the game, and that's kind of what happens when you're down on the corner depth chart as much as the Titans are, due in some part to trading good corners they had away. Also, it was announced after the game, Calvin Ridley broke his fibula and is done for the season, and we of course wish the best for any player who was hurt in Week 11, the best in their recovery. Now, I don't think the Titans have many winnable games left on their schedule, and they had flashes from their number 1 pick and lost in a close game, and with where this franchise is, that is a positive to take away. The Packers rebounded after 2 losses to the Panthers and Eagles and beat the Giants 27-20 at MetLife Stadium. And there was a point in the game where both Jordan Love and Josh Jacobs were hurt, so this was anything but a stress-free win, but Green Bay improved to 6-3-1. With Green Bay in Week 11, Malik Willis stepped up when he needed to, Christian Watson had a 2-touchdown game, and I would also say despite Jordan Love finishing 13 of 24, the box score does not do him justice because the Packers, on both sides of the football, could not stop dropping the pigskin. And if there is any big takeaway for Green Bay, it's to have every receiver and DB in the facility spend an extra 5 minutes on the jug machine every day this week. But overall, this was a solid bounce-back win. Jameis Winston started this game for the Giants, and I thought Mike Kafka called a solid game offensively, considering the hand he was dealt, and that I'm eager to see how the rest of the Giants season goes from this perspective, especially once Jackson Dart comes back. My big issue last week after Brian Daboll was fired was that he was the only one shown the door. I don't know why Shane Bowen is still employed, and like we said, the Giants got lucky today with the drops from Green Bay. The Giants have the Lions and Patriots on deck, and I would imagine most of us expect them to lose both games, but what I am eager to see is how Mike Kafka's offense plays in the ensuing few weeks. The Steelers improved to 6-4 with a win over the Bengals in Week 11 as they won with a score of 34-12. If you were not aware, Aaron Rodgers left the game with a left wrist injury, and Mason Rudolph came in relief and threw for 127 yards and a touchdown. The Steelers had 2 defensive touchdowns, one from James Pierre and the other from Kyle Duggar, and the biggest thing for the Steelers in this game, compared to the last time they played the Bengals a couple of weeks ago on Thursday night, was not allowing Jamar Chase to haul in 16 passes. He had 3 receptions for 30 yards in this game and never got going, and this was a huge win for the Steelers because the path for them is there. They play the Bears next week, and that game certainly is winnable, and they can be a 7-4 team entering their Week 13 game against the Bills. With Cincinnati, this was the 2025 season in a nutshell. The defense, which has been notorious for being a bad unit really over the past couple of years, did their job, and credit to the Bengals defense. They held the Steelers offense to 20 points, and if you are going on the road, you will take holding the home team to 20 points every single time. But when one thing goes right, the other seemingly doesn't, and like we said, the Steelers had 2 defensive touchdowns, and that's an incredibly frustrating way to lose a game. 4 field goals also isn't going to win it on the road, and I know this has been a long year for several reasons for the Bengals, but I think a lot of the time Zach Taylor coaches to not lose, and you see how that goes more often than not. And I think this offseason would be good to bring in a new coaching staff and go from there. The Bills beat the Bucs 44-32, and in this game, Josh Allen had one of the worst plays you'll see from an NFL quarterback, and also one of the best. Allen had 6 touchdowns in this game, and this was a huge win for the Bills after getting beat 30-13 by Miami in Week 10. Now, this is a weekly recap video, and obviously Bills fans should enjoy barbells or Duffs or Anchor Bar or any other place after this win in the Buffalo metropolitan area, but I think it's fair to say that this team's path is extremely limited due to their Achilles heel, and that's their run defense. Tampa ran for over 200 yards in this game, and this was after a week against Miami in which they ran for a $197. Everyone knows Josh Allen is one of the best players in the league when he's on, and nobody would question that, but if you had to put up 33 points and have 5 touchdowns in every playoff game, then I have some questions, and I think Bills fans do too. With Tampa, there's been a running narrative over the past few years that definitely gets covered up by winning, but it's been that Todd Bowles has been skating by with good offensive coordinators and that he's not a great head coach, and specifically with his in-game decisions. The Bucs punted the ball on 4th and 2 with 7 minutes left in this game, while down 37-32. The Bills already had 37 points on the day, and in my mind, I would question why you wouldn't go for it in that situation. And Tampa is 6-4 with a trip to SoFi next week to play the Rams. And with the Panthers win over the Falcons, the clear path to the NFC South title is a lot more murky than people probably once thought, and there are some underlying concerns in Tampa. Now, speaking of the Panthers, they won in Atlanta in a huge 30-27 win in overtime. Bryce Young, and no, this is not an exaggeration, threw for 448 yards and 3 touchdowns, and I'll be honest, I said multiple times in the past week that I was completely out on Bryce Young, especially after a 17-7 loss to the Saints in Week 10, in which a second-round rookie outplayed a struggling former number 1 overall pick. And to be honest, I couldn't be happier for Bryce Young, Tetairoa McMillan, and Xavier Legette too. Oh, and they also swept the division rival Falcons. This was a big game for Tetairoa McMillan as he finished the game with 8 receptions for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns, and my only thing with the Panthers, please somehow turn this into a consistent product rather than a once every few games type thing. Now, for the Falcons, Michael Penix left this game and Kirk Cousins did not play well in relief, but when you allow 486 yards of opposing offense and 30 points on top of it, it seldom matters. Atlanta is now 3-7, and Bijan Robinson had over 140 total yards along with 2 touchdowns in this game, and I not only feel bad for him, but for Falcons fans, of course, too, who have now lost 4 one-score games in 2025, and 4-6 sounds a lot better than 3-7, and the biggest thing with Atlanta at this moment is I don't think they have the right head coach or the right offensive coordinator, and the only way I think this gets better is by making major changes within the organization. The most surprising game of Week 11 was undoubtedly the Jags manhandling the Chargers the way they did to the tune of a 35-6 victory. And I was very down on the Jags heading into this game, especially with how they lost to the Texans in Week 10, and I was not just wrong about this game, but one of the games I've been most wrong about in a few years. And good for Liam Cohen, good for Anthony Campanelli, credit where it's due of course, and last but not least, good for Duval. This was an emphatic team win all the way around, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say this was one of the best games the Jags have played wire to wire in the past few years, and I'm not getting into an in-depth conversation about this for the Jags, but they're 6-4, and they play at Arizona and at Tennessee in their next 2 games. And all I'll say is, the path is there. With the Chargers, well, like we said with the Jags, this was undoubtedly one of the worst games this team has played over the past few years, meaning, like we said, beating the opposite, but the same concept applies. The Chargers were outgained 345 to 135, they averaged 2.6 yards per carry, and they had the ball for all of 22 minutes. This was a true tail tucked between the legs before they fly back to California. Justin Herbert also had a bad game, as even on the few times the pocket was clean, he missed throws he shouldn't have, and there's not a lot to say about the Chargers in Week 11 that 35-6 doesn't explain. The Chargers' upcoming schedule is brutal, and at this point in time, there are a lot of concerns in Los Angeles. The Chicago Bears beat the Vikings 19-17 with a walk-off field goal in Week 11, and if we're being honest, this game should not have been close. I thought the Bears were a much better team for pretty much the entire game, and outside of a few Caleb misses on throws 30-plus yards from the line of scrimmage, I thought he played really well, and the raw numbers from Caleb Williams do not do justice for how he played. There were several third and long gotta-have-it conversions, and it didn't help there was a missed field goal earlier in the game from Cairo Santos to allow the Vikings back into the game, but the Bears are 7-3, and they play the definition of a 50-50 game next week against the Steelers, and there is a real scenario where they're 8-3 through 11 games, and that's what matters most for Ben Johnson and his Bears in the first year with him as the head coach. Now, with Minnesota, this was a tough watch. The offense was a neutral or borderline reverse for most of the day, and JJ McCarthy looked awful for most of the game. And what's frustrating is, for every good throw he has, which seems like kind of a rare occurrence in itself, the receivers drop the passes. Jordan Addison had 2 big drops in this game, and again, JJ McCarthy was bad for most of this game, but it was one of the most frustrating games you'll see from a young quarterback. The final drive from McCarthy does not make up for how he played the rest of the game. We are 5 starts in with JJ, but there has been far, and I mean far, more bad than good. And it wouldn't be smart to give up on a player 5 games into their career, but there is legitimate reason to at least be concerned at this time about JJ McCarthy. The 49ers beat the Cardinals 41-22 in the desert in the first game Brock Purdy was back since Week 4 against the Jags. And in Brock Purdy's first game back, I know this may sound cliche, but I really felt the energy of the 49ers offense was on another level, and I felt like you could see with the purpose they played with each snap. Brock threw 3 touchdown passes, Christian McCaffrey ran for 2 more and caught another, and George Kittle also caught 2 touchdown passes too. And this was a huge win for San Francisco as they had Matt Stafford put up a highlight reel against their defense in Week 10. And given the 49ers are 7-4 and with their upcoming schedule, I'll be honest, I really do think they are going to make the playoffs. The path is there and they looked really good offensively in Week 11. With Arizona, there's 2 hilarious stats that have to be shared from this game. Jacoby Brissett, and this could be a trivia question in a couple of years, set the NFL record for completions in a single game with 47, and the Cardinals as a team had 17 penalties for 130 yards. And with this loss, Jonathan Gannon is now 3-13 lifetime in the NFC West. I'm sure you can make the argument they're down a few guys, most notably Marvin Harrison Jr., but does MHJ make up for 17 penalties? Does he make up for Jonathan Gannon's defense, which he was brought in to make better, by the way? Not give up 6 touchdowns? No, and I'd be shocked if Jonathan Gannon is the Cardinals head coach in 2026. The Ravens went into Cleveland and beat the Browns 23-16, and this was a game where Mark Andrews had his first career rushing touchdown. Derrick Henry also ran for over 100 yards, and Zay Flowers had a big 45-yard catch too. Outside of that, it was a long day for the offense, and there's a reason. Cleveland's defense is as good as it is, but the biggest thing is the Ravens won. The one Lamar interception was obviously not his fault, but getting a road division win when you lose the turnover battle 3-1 is huge, and especially when it's your 4th straight win. And the biggest thing for the Ravens is, like we've discussed, the path is there. They just need to stay the course and beat the Jets in Week 12 to improve to 6-5. They still play the Steelers twice, and the AFC North is wide open. With Cleveland, Myles Garrett had 4 sacks and Devin Bush had a pick 6. Dillon Gabriel also got hurt in this game, meaning the long-awaited Shedeur Sanders NFL debut happened, and I'll be honest, I thought Shedeur played like a 5th-round rookie. I know the Shedeur fans are very passionate, and I've seen a lot of justification for how he played, but he completed 25% of his passes in an NFL debut, and I thought the reasons he fell in the draft were evident in this game, meaning him not being close to a top-tier NFL athlete or having the arm strength to play at a high level in the NFL. I would like to see him have a bigger sample size, and we also acknowledge this situation is not great for anyone, let alone a 5th-round rookie, but I would be eager to see how he plays moving forward. The Denver Broncos. Yes, the Denver Broncos are 9-2 and have won 8 in a row after beating the Chiefs in Week 11 with a score of 22-19. The Broncos won the turnover battle 1-0 as they intercepted Patrick Mahomes while the Chiefs were driving, and Bo Nix led a game-winning drive. This was a huge win for Denver, not just because of who they beat, but it's an even bigger win because they're now 9-2, and the Chargers got throttled the way they did on Sunday, and of course, the Chiefs are now 5-5. And this was with several players out for Denver too, and this was also in a game with 147 yards and penalties for the Broncos, which I'm sure Denver would like to clean up. I don't think anybody would have thought when this team was 1-2 that they would be 9-2 entering their Week 12 bye, and for Broncos fans, this was the new best game of the season. Now with the Chiefs, 19 points on the road a lot of the time isn't going to get the job done, and not getting a first down within the last 8 minutes of the game is also not going to get the job done. And what was frustrating for the Chiefs was they didn't run the ball on their final possession of the game when it was tied. They had 3 straight passing plays, which resulted in 2 incompletions and a sack, and the Chiefs' remaining schedule was pretty difficult, all things considered. I think it would be dumb to write the Chiefs off, but the path for them ahead is very difficult, but I wouldn't bet against the Chiefs, and they've certainly earned the right to not bet against the Chiefs, but there is a scenario where they don't make the playoffs this year. The Rams beat the Seahawks 21-19 in a game that came down to the very last play. Matt Stafford threw for 2 touchdowns, and Kyren Williams ran for another 91 yards and a touchdown, and the Rams improved to 8-2 on the year. The punt at the end by Ethan Evans was a very stress-inducing play for both sides, but if there's anything about the Rams that I do think Rams fans would agree on, it's that Sean McVay could be more aggressive at times. And I think in a game where you win the turnover battle 4-1, you probably shouldn't have the game come down to a 61-yard field goal attempt. But the Rams' next 3 games are very winnable, as they play the Bucs, Panthers, and Cardinals, and I think there's a very real scenario where the Rams enter their Week 15 game against the Lions with an 11-2 record. With Seattle, there's 2 things in this game that frustrated me. One was the urgency in the 4th quarter, as I thought they were far too lackadaisical with the play clock, and the other, of course, was Sam Darnold. Darnold threw 4 interceptions in this game, and they weren't pretty. And I know some people are going to say, don't overreact to one game, but I would ask this. Do you think the Rams aren't going to make the playoffs? Do you think the Seahawks aren't going to play great defenses when it matters? No, and winning of course cures everything, but Darnold quietly had 6 total turnovers in his previous 3 games, and now has 10 turnovers in his last 4, and I think that has to be noted. The Seahawks defense played great to keep the offense in the game, but Sam Darnold against a very good Rams pass rush, a team that ended his season last year, I have to think, knowing you could be a wildcard team and have to go on the road 3 straight times to get to the Super Bowl is indeed concerning for the Seahawks. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like the video and subscribe, as a football will appear when you like the video and also helps tremendously with the YouTube algorithm. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.